Hey everyone, it's Mama Tempestt. I wasn't positive if I was ever going to make this video. I actually went through quite a traumatic birth and labor process, and I really thought it was better to keep it to myself. But as I've learned through therapy and through talking to a few people, that talking about it actually does help and makes me feel a little bit better about the process and how it all happened. And since I am going to be giving birth here in a few months again, it's actually a good activity for me to process it a little bit more. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about my birth story with my first. So I had a pretty smooth pregnancy, all things considered. I was super nervous about it, that it would be hard to get pregnant or that it would be a tough pregnancy, but honestly, it wasn't as bad as I imagined. We planned everything out. I tracked my ovulation and it worked really quickly. It only took about a month, so I was relieved because that's pretty quick. And if you didn't know, on average, it can take about 6 months for couples to conceive. So we felt super lucky to have things go so smoothly. And during the first trimester, I didn't throw up, but I was so nauseous and tired all of the time. I would just lie there feeling completely drained, and that's the thing they don't always tell you. Morning sickness isn't just in the morning. For a lot of women, about 70 to 80%, it's an all-day thing. Thankfully, once I hit the second trimester, the nausea disappeared. I gained just about 4 pounds by then, and so I felt like that was just a little bit of a victory. But by the third trimester, things got tougher. I gained a total of about 24 to 25 pounds, which is right on track with the recommended weight gain during pregnancy, but it came with a lot of pelvic pain. I ended up with something called pelvic girdle pain, which affects about 1 in 5 pregnant women. It's basically an intense discomfort in your pelvis and lower back that makes walking or even turning over in bed a challenge. So by that point, moving around was hard. I hated going to the bathroom, but on the bright side, I could eat all of the candy and ice cream I wanted. For some reason, my lactose intolerance went away, so I enjoyed that part quite a lot. One thing that's weird I wasn't expecting though, my seasonal allergies disappeared while I was pregnant. I have really bad allergies, but it's actually a rare but real phenomenon where your immune system kind of chills out during pregnancy to protect the baby. So I didn't complain about it because I'm normally itchy and sneezy all spring and fall. Overall, I can't complain too much about my pregnancy. Now, labor, that was a whole different story. It all started on a Sunday. I had been having Braxton Hicks contractions for a while, which are like practice contractions that get your body ready for the real thing. They usually start in the second trimester or the third trimester, and they're super common, but these felt more intense than usual on that day. And then I started bleeding, which really freaked me out because I hadn't bled at all during pregnancy. I passed what looked like a blood clot and immediately thought that something was wrong. So naturally, I texted my doctor a photo. Pregnancy will bring out a whole new level of no shame. And she said it was probably normal, just the bloody show. And that is when your mucus plug, which has been sealing off your cervix, comes out, signaling that your body is close to labor, and it's totally normal, but I just feel like no one really told me about it beforehand, so I was really concerned. The next day, Monday, was pretty calm. Nothing too crazy, just a few light contractions here and there, but Early Tuesday around 2 a.m., the real contractions hit and they woke me up. They were about 7 minutes apart, so I started timing them. I didn't want to wake up my partner, Adam, right away, since it could be a really long process. So I just kind of bounced on my exercise ball, breathing through the contractions while I waited on the contractions to get closer together. And by the time that Adam woke up, I was like, don't go to work. It's happening. We headed to the hospital that night around 10 p.m. after my contractions started getting closer. And my mom came with us. And when I got there, I was only 4 centimeters dilated, which wasn't what I wanted to hear. It had been a long time already, but I knew that they take the time. And usually you have to get to 10 centimeters before you can start pushing. So I settled in for the long haul. I was in triage for 6 hours, which is way longer than normal. Most people are there for about an hour or 2, but I just bounced on my ball and tried to breathe through the contractions and waited for a birthing room to open up. Finally, around 4 a.m., they moved me into a room, and by then I was about 5 to 6 centimeters dilated. At this point, I was laboring for 24 hours. So here's where things got interesting. I wanted an epidural because contractions are no joke, and but when the anesthesiologist came in, they had trouble getting it placed. Everyone says it feels like a bee sting, but for me, it was way worse. They tried once and it didn't work. And then they just, when they were about to try again, my water broke right there on the hospital bed. It was disgusting. It was a mess. So they had to change the sheets. And then the second time they tried the epidural, thankfully it worked. And I felt nothing within minutes, and the relief was immediate. My doula said I got much nicer at that point. But did you know that epidurals don't always work for everyone, or they can wear off? So apparently about 12% of women experience epidural failure or partial pain relief, which is exactly what happened to me later on. I was finally able to rest for a couple of hours, which was so nice after being awake for almost 24 hours straight. Our doula set up candles and used eucalyptus essential oils in a minster, which made the room feel calm and soothing. But when I woke up, I started feeling my toes again. I knew that wasn't normal. The epidural was wearing off, and this happens sometimes because the medicine can shift or your body metabolizes it too fast. They adjusted it, but I could still feel the contractions again, and by about 9 or 10 a.m., I was only 7 centimeters dilated. They gave me Pitocin to help speed things up, which is pretty common, but it made Abel's heart rate jump. About 23% of women get Pitocin experience this. And on top of that, I started getting these uncontrollable shakes, which are called labor shakes, ironically. They're not dangerous, but they make you feel like really cold and out of control, and it's actually your body's adrenaline kicking in. But I did ask the doctors to back off the meds a little bit, and they said I was already on the lowest dose, so I just kind of had to push through it. Speaking of pushing, by around 5 p.m. I was ready to push, and the epidural had worn off again, and I could feel everything. So they decided to give me fentanyl for the pain, but by the time I started pushing, it had worn off too. So I ended up pushing without any drugs, which is not ideal because it's very intense. It took me about an hour and a half of pushing, and everything seemed normal at first, but then things got a little scary. Abel had swallowed some meconium, which is his first poop, and amniotic fluid, and his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck twice and knotted, which happens to about 1 in 100 births. But when he came out, he wasn't crying and his color was off. He was a bluish gray, and Adam was supposed to cut the cord, but the doctors and nurses acted fast and cut it themselves and put him on my chest to clear his airways. I was terrified, not one that usually cries, but I just broke down when I saw him like that. He wasn't really moving or breathing, so it was terrifying. Thankfully, they did get him breathing, and after monitoring him for a bit, they let me hold him again. He ended up spending about 24 hours in the NICU, and by the time we went home a few days later, he was doing much better, breathing on his own and eating and nursing. So recovery for me wasn't ideal. I developed high blood pressure, which put me at risk for postpartum eclampsia, something that affects about 5 to 7% of women and is more common in Black women, like me. I had to go back to the hospital twice to make sure that everything was okay, and I was on high blood pressure medication for about a month and a half after the fact. And looking back, the whole experience was overwhelming, but I do feel proud about how we handled it. There are definitely things that still worry me for this current pregnancy, and the chance of an epidural not working or getting high blood pressure again. But I have learned a lot from this journey, and of course seeing Abel hitting all his milestones makes it all worth it, because he's the best little baby. He's great. So that's my birth story. It was quite the wild ride, but I am grateful for how far we've come. And if there is any questions you guys have, I kind of glossed over the NICU story, but if you have any questions about that, I'd happily go deeper into that. Or if you want to share your own birth story in my comments, please feel free. I know that it is a terrifying experience, whether it goes really well or if it is something that doesn't go as planned. And I happily share this story, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. It is a very healing journey to learn that, we're not alone in this crazy thing we do to make our beautiful families. So thanks again so much for listening. This is Mama Tempestt, and please like and subscribe and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.